is Sunday morning, rest day, no runs scheduled for today. Today what I want to do is take the girls up. There's an art festival in the neighborhood. We're all going to go as a family, check it out. And we use today to test the FeiyuTech VLOGpocket to show all the footage today off the iPhone. It's been a while since I've shot with a gimbal before, but two things definitely come back to mind when it comes to shooting with a gimbal. The first thing is that it's very conspicuous walking around, especially in a crowded area with something like this in your hand, even if you're just filming your kids. But the second thing about it is it's really fun to try and follow your kids around when you've got something like this. It's just like it becomes an extension of your arm after you take a minute to get used to it. So forgot how much fun it is to shoot with a gimbal. But before I talk any more about this particular gimbal that's designed for mobile phones, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a gimbal that was sent to me by FeiyuTech. However, they're not paying me to make the video or to use the gimbal at all, and they're not gonna get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts, and no one's gonna get a chance to see any of that until you guys see this video on YouTube. Now, with the disclosures out of the way, let's talk about the VLOGpocket from FeiyuTech. Now, FeiyuTech is a brand that I've had experience with for a couple of years before they reached out to me to review this particular unit. But before that, I haven't used any of their smartphone gimbals. I was using their action camera gimbals. So the first one they had was the G4, which is a gimbal that I used with my GoPro Hero 3 Plus Black, which was the first action camera that I ever bought, and I bought it refurbished. And the second FeiyuTech gimbal that I worked with was the G6 a little bit more recently. And that fits, I believe it fits GoPro Heroes 5 through 7, although I think I only used it with my GoPro Hero 7, I want to say. Maybe I used it with my 5, I'm not sure. But that's one that I've also used as well. But for me, with how good action cameras have gotten at stabilization and with the way that I shoot my running footage, in other words, I use a lot of slow motion where I don't need as much stabilization like a gimbal can provide. I don't find myself running with a gimbal that much anymore. Plus, the thing that I don't like about running with a gimbal, I know lots of you guys do it. I don't know how you guys do it. I can't do it because when you turn off a gimbal, like in between shots, you want to save the gimbal battery. You don't leave the gimbal on like the entire time. It gets like floppy, you know, and running with like an action camera and a gimbal for me just seems like you have to hold it a certain way and all that stuff. This gimbal has a couple of cool features that address that issue, but ultimately I don't really want to run with a gimbal. So this gimbal for me, let me turn it back on. So this gimbal for me is gonna be mostly for capturing kind of home videos, other kinds of non-running footage that I might want to. The thing that's nice about this one is because it's made for mobile phones, it's got a very focused use case. And again, I don't necessarily think it's for running because it's meant for phones. I think that it's used for people that want to get content to social media or to the internet very quickly. And so on the front, there's only two buttons. One is to activate the shutter. If you can connect this to your phone with Bluetooth, then use the Feiyu app. You can control like when you start and stop recording, or when you take a photo with the button on the handle rather than having to push the phone. The other button is you just double tap it, and it switches from portrait to landscape. So could be a really nice way to get some Instagram story or other vertical video that you want, whether you're using it on Snapchat or TikTok, any of the other social medias that you might be using. Get the footage either streaming or recorded, and then get that up onto the internet very quickly, because you've already got it on your phone in a place where you could edit, trim off some of the edges if you need to, and then upload. So that's really convenient. Double tap again to get it back to landscape mode. And then there's a trigger on the other side, which is useful because normally you're either just turning it to pivot the angle, but up and down the gimbal keeps it stabilized. If you want to have the gimbal look down, hold down the trigger, and then you can have it look down and look up. So then you can control more fine-tuned way how the gimbal is going to move. And I find this really intuitive, much more intuitive than other gimbals that I've used in the past, which are like one click for a certain mode, double click for another mode, triple click for a third kind of mode. And you'd never really know what mode you're in or what the gimbal is going to be doing. And so this is great, because then if you just want a stabilized shot, don't do anything. If you want it to look a specific direction, you can then hold down the trigger, and then that's the angle it'll move. And then when you let it go, it kind of stays in that angle or orientation until you move it back again. So you can kind of reset where you want it to look. So I found using this gimbal to be relatively intuitive. I didn't have to spend a lot of time trying to remember anything from the manual, which was fantastic. The other really amazing thing that this gimbal can do is, in addition to it being really lightweight, it folds down in a really unique way that I haven't really seen before. There is a thumb screw here, or I guess a finger screw here, where you can fold this over, tighten it back down, and then it folds down to this really nice compact package. Now the other thing that it does is, before I tighten it down, is everything locks into place. So you just twist everything in a certain direction, and now everything's locked, so it won't jiggle. And then you can unscrew it, and now you've got a tight little, very lightweight package that this gimbal folds down to, which is another big problem that I've always had, even if you're going to be using a gimbal for an action camera or for a phone, is that they're just bigger than they need to be. They just take up a lot of space. This folds down really nicely. I was able to fit this in a back pocket. It was a little bit bulky, but I was able to fit it in there. I was able to fit it on a side leg pocket in my pants as well. Again, a little bit bulky, but it definitely fit. I'm usually shooting, if I'm gonna be shooting with a gimbal like this, I'm gonna be shooting kids. And so I'm gonna have a diaper bag, a bag for snacks, water bottles, all that other kind of stuff. So very easy for me to find a place to put something this small. And then it kind of springs into action relatively quickly as well. So that way I just undo the screw and then kind of twist everything all at once. And now everything's kind of flexible again. So it was very nice to be able to kind of live with this gimbal as well as shoot with it. The one thing that I did find is that every once in a while I did have the gimbal kind of, when I was trying to move it a certain way, with the way that the angles are, it's kind of offset for way the arm is where the motors are. Sometimes that part got in the shot, and so I had to kind of back up and try to reframe the shot a little bit. That happened once in a while. It wasn't something that happened frequently, so I feel like some of the choices they made in terms of where to place the arm and the angle, I know a lot of the gimbal companies have been playing around and having some goofy designs come out. This one works for the most part. I feel like there's some compromises with every design that you have, but this one I felt like I could always see the screen really well. I could always get the shot that I wanted. Sometimes I did have a little bit of the arm get in the way though, so that is something to keep in mind. The other con that I would say for having something like this is, while it is really convenient to have this to be able to go from content to the internet super fast, it is a battery killer. Now granted, I am still using the iPhone 7. That's going to change in about 3 days from now, but it is an older phone. Battery life is already an issue for me when I'm both using the phone to post to social media as well as capture and edit footage. It just super quick drains the battery. And so I found myself when I'm using the gimbal, and I did take it with me on another day, the day before the footage that you saw, to go hang out with my running buddy. We ended up doing our 20-mile runs separately. We had different paces, different workouts for the day, but we did get together, got the kids together to hang out. There was a ribbon cutting at the park near his house. Cubs Charity had redone some of the baseball fields out there, and then they made like a big festival day out of it. So took the kids out there, got some kind of kids running around footage. Again, the battery drained super fast. Got there with 100%. I was down to like 10% in no time. But so I did find myself having to, or wanting to have, a battery pack with me if it was going to be a very long day of both shooting and kind of uploading stuff. I did try to upload some of that stuff to Instagram story just to kind of get a feel for what the workflow is like. It worked out pretty well. For the most part, the other thing to think about with this gimbal is that there is an app, the Feiyu app that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and with it you can control not only the shutter using the button that's on the handle, but you can also control lots of different settings of what the photos and videos you are going to shoot. Now they have a couple of like shooting modes and other kind of like camera tricks that it can do. The one thing that I wish that it could do that it can't is kind of a panning time lapse. So I was hoping that I could just set it and set like 0.1 over here, 0.2 over here, and then set the amount of time for the camera and the gimbal to just kind of move automatically. I couldn't figure out a way to do that right away. If you guys know, put it in the comments. I'd love to be corrected. You guys always know that I love being corrected, but I couldn't figure that out. The thing that I could figure out that I did enjoy was the face tracking. And so what you can do is set it up so that way it recognizes faces through your phone and the app, and it'll lock on you, which I thought could be really useful for those of you who are using this for Instagram stories. Maybe you want to set it down on the included mount that they have, which is super compact and perfectly sized for the weight of this gimbal. Really enjoy having that. So you could set it down, walk back a little bit, get yourself fully in frame or more in frame, and have the camera follow you around. I thought that was pretty cool. The girls also had a really great time playing around with it. It's a really neat feature, and I think that alone is worth having and downloading the app for, if just using that. I did find that it was weird because I don't think it knows what my phone is per se. So like there were some shooting modes like 1080 at 120 frames per second, the slow-mo frame rates, that it wasn't recognizing correctly. And then some of the front-facing camera potential frame rates and resolutions that I have available to me weren't showing up in some of the selectable options. So I found that a bit frustrating, but for the most part, what I was doing, all the footage that you saw, I was just using the regular iPhone camera app and had the different settings that I like there automatically in it, and I was just able to shoot that way and everything worked fine. The other thing that I really like about the Feiyu app though is that it doesn't try to save the footage that you shoot in the Feiyu app. In the Feiyu app, it saves those files directly to your Photos app, so that's nice, good for memory management. For someone like me who has an older phone, not as much memory in it in terms of storage, that is something that I definitely appreciate and something that other apps haven't been doing. Overall, in terms of shooting this kind of footage, family, home videos, the kinds of stuff that I've been trying to spend my rest days from marathon training shooting more of, since I haven't been doing a lot of that ever since I've been shooting a lot of running footage. It's been good to kind of find a reason to make some home videos, and getting this gimbal definitely is a good one. Enjoyed shooting with it. I think though, for the kinds of shooting that I do with kids for the home movies, is that I'm in tight spaces a lot of the time and I'm very close to the kids, and even then, like having the gimbal out all day, not something I really want to do, even as lightweight and compact as this one is. So what I think that I'll do is, when I'll carry this one around, is I'll have it for a certain type of shot, big panning shots, things where I want grand, smooth gestures, follow shots. I love follow shots, or shots where people are approaching and I'm kind of walking backwards. Those are the kinds of shots that I love to have and I think are great on gimbals. But for a lot of times I will mix that in with probably a lot of handheld stuff, because the kids are, you know, usually up close and have no sense of personal boundary. And so that way, like having like a gimbal might be a little bit like uncomfortable, because kids generally do get in your face. But I think that it's a good tool to have. It's just $100, so definitely an affordable way to get into gimbals in terms of upping your production value if you're using just a phone or just a phone for your content creation. I think that it definitely helps if you're just doing talking head stuff, or if you're filming other talking heads. It definitely helps keep things nice and stable, and you can tell that you're not just hand holding something. And I think that makes a big difference. So those are my thoughts on the VLOGpocket from FeiyuTech. Let me know in the comments if you have any other questions. I'd love to talk to you guys more about it down there. Before I go, I want to remind you about the charity runner for the week. And for those of you who are new here, what that is every week I focus on a different runner who's raising money by running a race for charity. And this week it's Jerry Williams, who's going to be running the Chicago Marathon and raising money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And I've been happy to donate $70 to Jerry's fundraising efforts, and I'll post a link in the description in case you'd like to learn more. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?